Sir Muhammad wa ala Muhammad Salawat. Inshallah, to begin the program for this evening, I'd like to request Ustad Hassan Zinda for recitation of Holy Quran with Allah Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قد أفلح المؤمنون. قد أفلح المؤمنون الذين هم في صلاتهم خاشعون والذين هم عن اللغو معرضون والذين هم للزكاة فاعلون والذين هم لفروجهم حافظون إلا على أزواجهم أو ما ملكت أيمانهم فإنهم غير ملومين. فمن ابتغى وراء ذلك فأولئك هم العادون والذين هم لأماناتهم وعهدهم راعون والذين هم على صلواتهم يحافظون أولئك هم الوارثون الذين يرثون الفردوس هم فيها خالدون. ولقد خلقنا الإنسان من سلالة من طين ثم جعلناه نطفة في قرار مكين ثم خلقنا النطفة علقة فخلقنا العلقة مضغة فخلقنا المضغة عظاما فكسونا العظام لحما ثم أنشأناه خلقا آخر فتبارك الله أحسن الخالقين. ثم إنكم بعد ذلك لميتون ثم إنكم يوم القيامة تبعثون ولقد خلقنا فوقكم سبع طرائق وما كنا عن الخلق غافلين. صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد.
Jazakallah khair, but Ustad Hassan, for that amazing recitation as always. If you're interested, the Ustad is offering summer camp for ages 8 and up for Hifz Quran. For more details, please visit our CFK app. For his recitation and well-being, inshallah, loud salawat, please. Inshallah, to continue the program for this evening, I'd like to request Brother Hassan Abbas Kanani for recitation of poetry with the loud salawat, ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Apologies, inshallah, we'll begin with recitation of poetry by Brother Qaim with the loud salawat, ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.
पत्थर हटा के लाश से ज़ैनब ने दी सदा, क्या तुम मेरे हुसैन हो, कैसे परे हैं जिस्म के टुकड़े जुदा जुदा, क्या तुम मेरे हुसैन हो। पत्थर हटा के लाश से ज़ैनब ने दी सदा, क्या तुम मेरे हुसैन हो। हाय हाय मेरे गरीब का क्या हाल कर दिया, गौरों से लाश दाश्त में पामाल कर दिया, पहचानू किस तरह से बदन से है सर जुदा, क्या तुम मेरे हुसैन हो। पत्थर हटा के लाश से ज़ैनब ने दी सदा, क्या तुम मेरे हुसैन हो। पहचान लूंगी मैं तुम्हें, आवाज़ मुझको दो, दम तोड़ से जो देखा है करियल जवाने को, आंखों में अब बहन की उजाला नहीं रहा, क्या तुम मेरे हुसैन पातर हता के लाश से ज़ैनब ने दी सदा, क्या तुम मेरे हुसैन हो। करता रहा है ज़िब्ह की कोशिश कहाँ कहाँ, खंजर पे है कटी हुई गर्दन पे भी निशान, काटा है किस तरह से सितमगार ने गला, है क्या तुम मेरे हुसैन हो। पातर हता के लाश से ज़ैनब ने दी सदा, क्या तुम मेरे हुसैन हो। क्या ले गई है लूट के सब कुछ ये अश्कियाँ, तन पर बचा है माँ का ये कुर्ता सिला हुआ, निकले थे जब भी कयाम से ये हाल तो ने था, क्या तुम मेरे हुसैन हो। पातर हता के लाश से ज़ैनब ने दी सदा, क्या तुम मेरे हुसैन हो। कैसे परे है जिस्म के टुकड़े जुदा जुदा, क्या तुम मेरे हुसैन हो। पातर हता के लाश से ज़ैनब ने दी सदा, क्या तुम मेरे हुसैन हो। पातर हता के लाश से ज़ैनब ने दी सदा, क्या तुम मेरे हुसैन हो। सवाल।
Jazakallah khair, Brother Qaim, for that amazing recitation for the dear brother, and inshallah his continued recitation. Another last salawat, please. Inshallah, at this time, I'd like to request Brother Hassan Abbas Kanani for recitation of poetry. And brothers and sisters, as you make your way into the main hall, inshallah, try to move forward with the loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
محمد وآل محمد صلوات. चालीस बरस रोते न क्यों, आबिद मुझते चालीस बरस रोते न क्यों, आबिद मुझते ताओ मेरे समाए में वो मंज़े ताओ मेरे समाए रहे आँखों में वो मंज़े 40 बरस रोते न क्यों आबिद मुझते देखा था इन्हीं आँखों से घर अपना उजड़ता देखा था इन्हीं आँखों से घर अपना उजड़ता बेगोरो कफन लाश शहीदों के ज़मीं पे 40 बरस रोते न क्यों आबिद मुझते गुज़रे थे कहाँ रंज बहुत पूछा जो किसी ने गुज़रे थे कहाँ रंज बहुत पूछा जो किसी ने आशा में ही आशा आशा में ही आशा कहा सर को झुका के 40 बरस रोते न क्यों आबिद मुझते किस मर्द में है हौसला जुज़ आबिद बीमार किस मर्द में है हौसला जुज़ आबिद बीमार माँ बहनों को बाजार में देखे जो खुले से माँ बहनों को बाजार में देखे जो खुले से 40 बरस रोते न क्यों आबिद मुझते क्या गुज़री दिले सैयदे सज्जाद पे उस दम क्या गुज़री दिले सैयदे सज्जाद पे उस दम जब लूटा गया बीवियों का मकना ऊँचा दे 40 बरस रोते न क्यों आबिद मुझते ताऊ मेरे समाए रहे 40 बरस रोते न क्यों आबिद मुझते पर मोहम्मद वाले मोहम्मद सलावत.
Jazakallah khair, Brother Hassan Abbas Kanani, for that amazing recitation. Allow salawat for the dear brother, please. Respected Sayyid, brothers and sisters of faith, Assalamu alaikum. Condolences to the Imam of our time on the passing of his holy grandfather, the fourth Imam, Imam Sajjad alayhi salam. Allahumma sa. Jazakallah khair to Sayyid Hassan for accepting our invitation to address the Mu'mineen both tonight and tomorrow on the Holy Martyrdom. Alhamdulillah, your presence is always appreciated, although your visit is always very short. We are very gracious for you to be here so that we may learn from you. Inshallah, for the well-being, for the Sayyid, allow salawat, please. Inshallah, please note that the program for tomorrow evening will begin at 7:15 p.m. with recitation of Surah Yasin. Inshallah, please note that tomorrow night there will be a youth program with Sheikh Mehdi, hosted by the Dallas Youth Group, called The Thinking Believer, Bringing Karbala Home. The program will start at 9:30 p.m. in the DYG Lounge, and it's open to both brothers and sisters from the ages of 14 to 40. The Thinking Believer is a new discussion-focused event series dedicated to exploring the ideas, principles, and challenges that shape our faith and our daily lives. For this session, Sheikh Mehdi Rastani will lead an interactive discussion on the timeless message of Imam Hussein alayhi salam and the principles he embodied on the day of Ashur. Inshallah, for more details, please visit our CFK app. Please note that inshallah, Dr. Muhammad Mirza will be providing his services for pediatric patients at We Care Clinic this upcoming Sunday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. If you are interested for his services for your son or daughter, please inshallah visit our CFK app or website to book your appointment. Ustad Hassan is hosting from June 29 to July 24th from Monday through Thursday for ages 8 and up from 1 p.m. to 3:30 p.m. a Hifz Quran camp. If you're interested in signing up your son or your daughter, please inshallah visit our app for more detailed announcements. Before I request the Sayyid to ascend the member for this evening, I'd like to request we recite Surah Fatiha for the marhumin of tonight's program sponsors. Let us also include our own marhumin, mu'minat, and those of the Muslim Ummah and those on the Fatiha wall. Inshallah, at this time, I'd like to request Sayyid Hassan to ascend the member for this evening to address the mu'mineen and request brothers and sisters to please move forward with Allahu salawat ala Muhammad wa ale Muhammad.
أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وبه نستعين لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم والحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين بالقاسم المصطفى محمد ثم الصلاة والسلام والتحية والإكرام على أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين من الأولين والآخرين إلى قيام يوم الدين بعد صلوات على محمد وآل محمد. Mu'mineen, mu'minat, brothers and sisters in Islam and Iman, Salamun alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'd like to begin by offering my condolences to all you mu'mineen, mu'minat present tonight as we commemorate the Shahada anniversary of our fourth Imam, Imam Ali ibn al-Hussein, Sayyid al-Sajjadeen, Zayn al-Abideen, alayhi salatu wassalam. For these 2 nights that we have together, I had a few different options about, what kind of topics we could go through. I don't want to bore you with some long introduction. What ends up happening in a lot of communities for a lot of us who are on, different parts of our spiritual journey, right? Some of us maybe we're in a place where maybe we think we have the basics down, and maybe we're just working on, ahkam or building our akhlaq, something like that. Maybe some of us are looking for more history lessons because we have the other things down packed, but maybe we don't know the history of the Ahlul Bayt very well. Some of us, maybe history, we're fine, aqidah, we're fine, all that, but we're trying to really deepen things with, Islamic philosophy, irfan, spirituality, learn the hikmah and wisdom behind certain things. So we're all, at different perspectives. A lot of us, whenever we're thinking about that improvement, we usually tend to look forward. Like we think about our base, we're like, okay, the base is fine, now where can I go beyond this? Right? What's the sort of next step in my spiritual evolution? What a lot of ulama mention is that one of the reasons why we kind of get stuck sometimes, or we expect a certain type of growth within us and it doesn't happen, is because we end up looking forward when we actually should be looking backwards. And what they mean by that is what holds us back sometimes is what we thought was a strong base might have actually been weak in the first place. And I don't know if I've said it here before, but many of us who, let's say, we are looking to improve or strengthen our furu' ad-din, right? The so-called branches of religion, ahkam and fiqh and all those branches. A lot of times those doubts or those problems or the weaknesses and deficiencies that end up in furu' ad-din, for example, why somebody might struggle to even wake up for Fajr in the first place, or pray at all, or pray on time. Or maybe they pray on time, but they don't have focus there. Or they question certain other ahkam rulings. Right? To this day, people, even though they might pay their khums, they still might be questioning, okay, where does the actual rulings come from? Where is it in the Quran? Explain to me from the riwayat. So sometimes there are all these questions about the furu' ad-din, how to practice them, getting more yaqeen, improving behavior, etc. And sometimes those issues might just be related to that, but a lot of times those issues that we have in the furu' ad-din are usually because we had issues in the usul ad-din first. We're just looking at symptoms when the actual issue of the virus was something, deep down. And the reason sometimes we kind of blow past and look past the usul ad-din is because it seems so obvious. Right? Okay, tawheed, obvious thing. I don't need to do more than that. Allah's justice, He's just. Okay, I get it. He doesn't do anything unjust or unfair. Move past that. He sends down prophets, nubuwah. I got it. 124,000 of them. Next. Imams, clearly we have that down. There's 12 of them, all right? I got that. And I have to obey them and everything they say. Cool. And then ma'ad or qiyamat or afterlife, however you want to describe the fifth one. Okay, there's an afterlife. I get it. I'm accountable. So we take a very cursory, superficial, zahiri, sathi look at those things. We feel like we've got them solved, then we go forward. And maybe that's enough for a lot of us, right? I don't want to discount that understanding. That could be enough to act as a launch pad and a catalyst so that we practice fine. That's okay. But for some of us, I would say for myself included, going back and re-examining and reanalyzing some of the usul ad-din can actually be a very transformative experience. And it might seem almost childish at first, that, why am I going to have to go back through these things? These are the ABCs, the Alif Ba Ta's of Islam. What's the point of this? But it's in those concepts that you and I take for granted that a lot of these other deeper concepts actually open up. So what we want to do for these 2 nights, inshallah, is to go back to 2 of these concepts. One of them, of course, the most important one, although sometimes people don't think that Shias consider this one very important, is the concept of Tawheed itself. Right? We Shias, unfortunately or fortunately, we jump to Imamat before anything else. There was someone we had a conversation with, and we were talking about different ideas about proving Allah's existence and some other random topics. And we were talking about how people have a lack of Iman in the West, and people are struggling in their practice, and what we can do. And this person's answer, with all due respect, they were very sincere about it, but because some people were trying to answer that, maybe there's a problem in their aqidah about Tawheed, which would make a lot of sense. Or maybe they don't have a lot of trust in the Quran or the prophets, which makes a lot of sense. So this individual, Allah bless their soul, was like, well, I don't think they have a good enough relationship with the ulama yet. If they can have a great relationship with the ulama, then maybe they'd have a better relationship with the imams. If they get a better relationship with the imams, then they can believe that Allah exists. It's like, that is the most backward thing I've ever heard in my life. It seemed a little strange to me. But a lot of us, that's how sometimes we end up being taught about all of our identity points in the first place, is that we've started with, let's say, ulama and understanding them first. And then from there, we're kind of taught some things about the imams. And then, okay, maybe the Prophet is thrown in there, right, for a 5-minute conversation. And then at the end, like, okay, and then there's one God, by the way. Just, keep that in mind as well, too. So, whereas we should have started with Tawheed, which would have naturally led us to a strong sense of nubuwah and prophethood, which would have led us, obviously, to imamat, which would have led us to a stronger idea of ma'ad and accountability. I mean, that seems to be the logical, rational, proper course of action. But some of us, again, we either went backwards or we jumped all over the place through no fault of our own. Sometimes that's just the way that we were taught. So for tonight at least, I want to go back through this idea of Tawheed. And again, I know you're thinking like, what else is there? Well, if there wasn't anything else, then I don't know what I'm going to be saying for the next 45 minutes. But there seems to be, right? Allah Himself says there's a lot of stuff to say about Tawheed. That's why He keeps talking about it in the Quran. It's obviously the most important concept for us. So clearly, if for us in our minds, whatever we have right now, compare that to the idea, the way that Allah is described by the Ahlul Bayt. If there are means of connection to Allah, fine. Then I should look at the words of the Ahlul Bayt. Is the way that they are describing Allah anywhere close to the way that I think about and describe Allah? People talk about this idea of tawassul all the time, whether you're pro or against it. I don't want to get into that. But all sometimes we offer humbly to those who are opposed to tawassul, to the Ahlul Bayt, right, who say, I'm going to ask Allah directly. So look, you want to ask Allah directly? Bismillah, go ahead. No problem. But if you think that you are calling to the exact same Rabb and Allah and Khaliq and Nurture as Amirul Mu'mineen alayhi salam, then you're fooling yourself. There's no way that you have the exact same Creator and God in your mind as the Ma'sumin have. It's impossible. So clearly there's some difference that we have to acknowledge and figure out how do we bridge that gap. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. And since we're talking about Imam Ali alayhi salam, where we have many of these riwayat which should give us pause. Right? So one of these narrations, he's reported to have said, Tawheed, at-Tawheed hayatun nafs. Tawheed is the life of your nafs. The life force, the lifeblood of your nafs. Now, okay, that sounds like a beautiful hadith. Let me take that hadith, and there's other ones as well too that we'll mention, inshallah. Let me hold that up to the understanding of Allah that I have in my mind right now. How is Allah in our mind right now? How are we usually taught? From when we're young, it's Allah-ik, right? God is one. Anything else? Not really, right? Just don't be a mushrik, don't be a polytheist. Allah does everything. He's in charge of everything. He sees everything. All thanks goes to Him. Alhamdulillah. And then, now let's move on. That's pretty much the limit of Tawheed. Yes, maybe we'll memorize a few of the names. Maybe we'll negate some things from Allah. And that'll be pretty much it. There's not going to be much beyond that. So if the idea that I've been raised with or that I have in my mind, that La ilaha illallah just means, all right, there's only one God, and then He has a couple of these qualities, and He doesn't have these other qualities, and that's it. Does that sound like it's the life force and lifeblood of my nafs? Clearly there's something missing. Especially when you look at some of the other riwayat. For example, one that's attributed to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Where he's reported to have said, At-Tawheed nisfuddin. Tawheed is nisfu din. What does nisf mean? Half. Tawheed is half your deen, your religion. So, hold on, you're telling me just believing that God is one, not zero, not two, not a million, that's half of my religion? Now, we know from, hopefully, what Sheikh Mahdi and the rest have been teaching you, that religion, sometimes we make it too difficult, but should it be that easy, that all I have to do is believe that God is one, and now half my religion's complete? No, I think we're doing a little injustice to the religion of Islam if, and the words of the Ahlul Bayt, if we can think that just believing that there's one God, not zero, right, not in being an atheist, and not being a polytheist, that's enough to complete half of religion. There's a problem there. So clearly, there's something missing, a lot missing from our understanding of Tawheed. Let's explain a few other points. It's also sad for us as Muslims to really not have that full depth and breadth on the understanding of Tawheed as well. Especially since, arguably, we are probably the only faith that really focuses on a relationship with Allah. Even in our name, right? Muslim means what? One who submits, right? Islam, meaning to submit. Muslim, one who's performing or practicing Islam, one who's submitting. Submitting to who? To Rasulullah? No. To the Imams? No. To the ulama? No. To Allah. That's how we're defined. That's our identity marker. Now, other religions, right? Judaism, for example. Now, there's arguments among rabbinical scholars. Why is it named Judaism? Does it have to do with the area of Judea? Does it have to do with the tribe of Judah, that they all came from him? We don't care about those arguments. But either it's geographical or it's coming from a tribe. Nothing to do with God specifically. Well, what about now Hinduism? Again, Hindustan, coming from a geographical location, arguably. Christianity. Now, Christianity, you might say, well, that is related to God. Well, no, because you would have other words, even in the Old and New Testament, to describe God. Christ, for Christians at least, would have had to do with what they believe, the human, quote-unquote, form of the Son of God. So even that, they're focusing on a human being and not on the Father as well. Buddhism, same thing. You can pick any religion that you want. How many of them are actually focused on Allah or a God specifically? At least in their name. Nobody. We're the only ones. So it's weird if we don't have a strong understanding and connection to Allah based on our names alone. And I'm sure most of you who know your history really well, when you see some of the older writings by Europeans, these Orientalists, and even by older American authors, did they call us Muslims? No, what did they refer to us as? Anybody know? Muhammadans, right? Or Mohammedans, right? Whatever they put in their books. Jefferson, for example, that's how he addressed people, Mohammedans. Many Europeans, when they were analyzing these desert, backwards, barbaric people, they called them Mohammedans. So even when they're trying to describe us, they won't even use, I don't want to say our pronouns because it has a whole other context, but we have identified ourselves a certain way, and they don't even want to use that. Like, no, we're going to call you something else. Because even in their mind, no, there's nobody who can be connected to God that much. It's got to be to a human being. It's got to be to a person. Whereas our mark of pride, it's July now, right? I can say that, right? Our mark of pride, is in our obedience and our connection to Allah, to this idea of Tawheed, right? That's what it happens to be. And our submission to that, even in our name. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Sometimes our problem comes out because of our lack of ability to explain Tawheed properly. What I mean by that is just the simple idea of proving God's existence, which, how long ago, you could argue decades, you could argue centuries, was never really an issue because the majority of mankind believed in some sort of God or creator or some higher metaphysical reality. It's only very recently now that there's been this huge pushback by people that those who believe in religion, those who believe in God, are seen as backwards, are seen as being irrational and illogical and all the other ad hominem attacks they have on us. It's a very sort of recent idea. So whereas before, it used to be quote-unquote atheists or agnostics who people used to look down upon, like you don't believe in anything, you don't have a faith, all you believe in is what your senses tell you, that would be laughable. But now it's the other way around, where if you're asked, why don't you eat this kind of food? Why don't you drink alcohol? Why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? Why do you dress like this? Well, I'm a Muslim. I'm a Muslimah. This is how we do it. Oh, you believe in that stuff? So now they're the ones who laugh at us or Christians or Jews or anybody else who has this set of belief. So now the whole thing has kind of turned around on us. And a lot of us, our iman gets put in check when we don't have a response for them. When they push back on us, they say, why would you believe in this invisible sky thing? It doesn't make sense that the Bronze Age people made up. Why do you do all this? And some of us, for whatever reason, we just don't have any response, or we don't have a sufficient response, or maybe we get flustered, we push back in a really rude way. It doesn't make us look good, it doesn't make Islam look good, it doesn't make religion look good. And then that hurts and takes away from our iman a little bit too. And then what does that do, right? When somebody is poking at our usul ad-din, like we said before, it's going to start having an effect on our furu ad-din too. Maybe I don't have a doubt necessarily that salah and namaz is wajib. Okay, I don't have that doubt. But now because somebody put a small doubt in God's existence in my head, in my heart, now that next time that I have to stand on that janamaz, on that musalla, and I want to offer my prayer, now that doubt's going to come back up out of nowhere. It's going to ruin my salah a little bit. Or maybe when I'm struggling, trying to get out of bed at Fajr time, then, shaitan and my nafs, they're working together to try to keep me in bed. That shak is now going to add as fuel and ammunition for them. Do I really want to get out of bed just for this stuff that I don't really understand fully? This happens I'm just using salah as an example. You can use a lot of other actions and ahkam and fiqh and legal issues as examples too. So this has a wide range of effects that sometimes we just can't respond, properly to these things. I'm going to give another example. This idea of atheism, it's not a new phenomenon either. Right? This has been around for millennia. It's been around for a long time. And this even existed during the time of the Ahlul Bayt. For example, even during the time of Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq alayhi salatu wassalam. So, I'm sure many of you have heard the name of Mufaddal ibn Umar before, right? Famous companion of the 6th Imam. So there's a story narrated. The story actually ends up, it's been translated in a book as well called Tawheed al-Mufaddal. I don't know, maybe you've seen that book. So that whole book is pretty much just long narration. For those who may not be aware of it, I just want to go through the first part because it's relevant to our discussion. So, I'll skip a lot of the details which are not necessary for our conversation tonight. So Mufaddal goes to Masjid al-Nabi once. He's inside, engaged in his ibadat, maybe doing his ziyarat. And while he's there, trying to focus on his salah, his ibadah, on his ziyarah, whatever he's doing, walks in two individuals, and one of them happens to be the head of the atheist school of thought at the time, Ibn Ali Auja, that was his name. So this teacher, this head atheist, head philosopher, came in with one of his students. Now, what they were doing in Masjid al-Nabi, that's a great question. I don't know. Maybe it was just, back then that was the Yemeni coffee shop. I don't know, right? But so these two walk in, and they're sitting in Masjid al-Nabi. They're sitting away from Mufaddal, but within earshot, meaning Mufaddal could hear their conversation. So Mufaddal is trying to engage in his ibadah. I'm sure he wasn't intending to pay attention, but like some uncles and aunties do whenever there's some youth nearby, they start paying attention out of nowhere, right? They start listening in. So Mufaddal is paying attention to what they're saying. So Ibn Ali Auja, this head atheist, is just sitting there near the qabr of our Rasul, and he's saying, wow, what a trick, what deceit that this guy Muhammad has played. That he came with this fake idea, he tricked and messed with the minds of people, and now look at how his name is being recited all throughout the day, right? And this call to prayer. Wow, and then he starts going on and on like this. Now, I'm sure just me reciting this part for you, whatever's happening to you right now, whatever blood pressure is rising in you, however much you're clenching your fists, wishing, if I was back then, you know what I would have done? Well, that's what was happening in Mufaddal. Right? He was your typical uncle kind of just sitting there like, I can't take this anymore. They're, insulting my Rasul, my Prophet. I can't handle this anymore. So he leaves his ibadah, leaves his ziyarah, whatever he was doing, gets up and he goes and starts screaming at both of them. how could you say something like this? And then starts giving whatever version of proof that he understands, saying, don't you know that the world was created like this, and there's this wisdom behind it, and blah, blah, blah. It goes on and on and on and on. And this atheist is just looking at him, was kind of smirking, smiling, waiting for him to finish. He said, wait, who are you? Like, whose student are you? And he says, I'm the student of Ja'far ibn Muhammad as-Sadiq. He said, okay. He said, and this atheist says, I've sat with your teacher, Ja'far ibn Muhammad. I've sat with him before. He's never spoken like this to me. Whenever I go to him, I sit down, he welcomes me warmly. He lets me fully express myself, whatever ideas I have in my mind, whatever objections and criticisms I have, he hears everything out. He fully waits for me to complete my arguments, and then very, intellectually, very civilly, in a proper ilmi way, an educational, intellectual way, he begins responding one by one, giving me something to think about. It's like, that's what your teacher does. So if that's really what your teacher is and who he was, then you've learned nothing from him. So now, you can imagine, Mufaddal is like, oh man, oops. So he's now dejected, and he ends up going now to Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, tells him the story about what happened. And again, this is where the bulk of that book or the narration continues, where he didn't have a response for this atheist, and he wishes he could have responded in some proper way. So the rest of the narration goes that Imam Sadiq says, okay, I can teach these things to you, and Mufaddal says, no, I'm not going to be able to memorize these things. He's like, no problem. Imam Sadiq puts his hand on his heart, on his chest. He says, I will recite these things to you, and you'll never forget about them. So the rest of the narration, and again, the book that's been translated, is the rest of all of this, of these various types of arguments and proofs that Imam Sadiq alayhi salam goes through. That's not what I want to discuss. It's that first part, this, Salaat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Just a little loud here. Yeah. So, that was the whole point of the narration, is him being kind of dejected. The point that I wanted to focus on is Mufaddal was one of those types that really thought that he could, go up against just some random atheist because what do they know? I have the teachings of the Imams, the Ahlul Bayt. Of course I can put this person in their place. But ilm is not enough, whatever we might think is ilm. Ilm requires akhlaq, and akhlaq requires ilm. I know there's a lot of us who want to be ambassadors for the Ahlul Bayt. I've heard this term used a lot, that all Muslims are an ambassador. I'm not sure if any of the local ulama have that opinion or not. I don't want to go against them publicly, obviously, especially in their hometown. This idea about being an ambassador, though, I don't understand it. I don't think any person is meant to really be an ambassador for anything, except for those who specifically put these little swirly things on their head and these coats that get you overheated in 100-degree weather. They're the ones who go and study, who literally are going to become ambassadors because they can speak on behalf of Islamic stuff, or at least they try. Sometimes they fail, but at least they study to some degree. Others, okay, maybe there's a few books we've read or we've listened to some lectures, and we feel like that might be enough for us to go and start arguing with people and debating them. But like we said, that there's two parts of this equation. There's ilm and there's akhlaq. Maybe I have read enough books. Maybe I have all the proper arguments there. But if it's presented in a disgusting, demeaning, insulting way, like when is the last time any of us have ever been convinced by somebody who's rude? Now maybe some of you are like urafa over here and you have the highest level of akhlaq that even if somebody's rude and mean to you, still because of the open-heartedness that you have, you'll still listen to them. But if you're a typical rude individual like myself, that I'm not looking at the argument you're giving, you're speaking to me in a rude way, I'm not listening to what you're saying really, I'm only looking at the tone of your voice. Right? That's what happens to me a lot of the times, right? When I try to make a point, and everybody's like, why are you so loud? I'm like, I don't know, that's just how I am. I can't, sorry. So presentation does matter for a lot of individuals. Yes, sometimes maybe we have the other side only. Somebody's very calm, and they have that really good akhlaqi demeanor. And maybe they have a nice British accent to go on top of it, which makes it sound really, really nice. They have that cool irfani voice, right? They whisper everything so that the media team has to turn up the volume to 11 and do all that extra gain, which you're never supposed to do. But the actual stuff, the things that they're presenting is like nothing. There's no actual substance that they're offering. It's a great package, so to speak. It's a nice delivery, but there's actually nothing really there. Now, presentation is great if you want to take Instagram photos, right? This is a big thing for me, especially because I love sushi. And a lot of times I have to rely, and I've learned not to rely on people's reviews online. So they'll take all these pictures, and the pictures will look great, right? Because what that fake sushi, chef or artist, whatever, will do is they'll make it look really nice, but they use low quality, fish, low grade, seaweed, really terrible rice. They don't know how to cook it properly. So everything looks great, but then you eat it and you realize that this is like dollar store. This is like, grocery store sushi. This is not real sushi. So this is how a lot of presentations come out from us as well too. It might present really nicely, it might sound great, but actually there's zero substance there. So it's an advice for all of us that if we are going to quote unquote be ambassadors, number one, don't. But if still you're not going to listen to anybody and you're going to go and do it and want to go debate and argue and push arguments across people, fine. But make sure that we have both of these things. I have to have the proper amount of knowledge, an extensive amount of knowledge, not just simple, 60-second clip online, but proper knowledge and the akhlaq to back it up as well. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. One more salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Now, let's get back to Tawheed. So, what exactly do we need to re-examine when it comes to this concept of Tawheed? We said that when we are learning Tawheed, the type that we learn is sometimes known as numerical Tawheed or quantitative Tawheed, which simply means that we learn that Allah is one, like it's one, not zero, and not more than one. It's a numerical understanding of Tawheed. That's what we get. Or as, again, those of us from the Urdu subcontinent backgrounds learn, that when we are children, we learn it as Allah-ik, right? That's how we're taught from when we're kids. So as we kind of grow past that, and we try to move to the next phase, all we really have at our disposal is that God is one. That's it. It's very rare that we've actually heard that there is another higher or alternative explanation for Tawheed. And that's what we want to try to offer for tonight, inshallah. Now, this explanation or description of Tawheed, it's not simply a translational difference. It's not just, that we're translating it differently, although that's what we're going to do. But it's a bit different than that. We actually have to look at the word Tawheed itself and see how that opens up different sort of horizons and paradigms. But before we do that, we have to see what we're already working with. So when we translate or when we think about Tawheed, what typical translations or words come to mind? Like if somebody said and asked you, simple, non-Muslim, what is Tawheed? What is this idea? How would you translate it or explain it to them? Oneness of God, that's a typical one. And what else? What's the typical M word that people use? Tawheed means monotheism, right? That's typically how you'll see it in even our own books. Tawheed, it means oneness of God, or it means monotheism. Okay, it sounds like a decent enough explanation, but that is related to the quantitative numerical understanding of Tawheed. God is one, that's what it means. Now, if that's what Tawheed is, then in that sense, to some degree, then there's all the other religions that only believe in one God, then technically there should really be no difference between them and us. Although we do know that there has to be a difference, but if Tawheed, as it's been for us, has been stripped of everything else, if all that's left is the numerical thing, then really our concept of Tawheed is like everybody else's. So we have to have something unique behind it. Now, how are we going to do that? Again, there's a lot of different ways we can go about it. What I'd like to do is just focus on the Arabic itself. And this is one thing that's very beautiful about Arabic, those of you who have studied it before. And this is something that many of our ulama, especially those who are more into philosophy, irfan, metaphysics, Sufism, etc., one thing that they pay close attention to is the actual Arabic that Allah employs. They say, look, we are not massaging and abusing concepts in the Quran. We are actually looking at the literal and original meaning of these words. These words in Arabic, they have obviously a meaning that Arabs would use right now. Then there's the sort of fusha meaning, which was understood by most of the Arabs at the time of when the Quran came down. And then there's also classical, even pre-Islamic usages. Now again, there's a whole theory about the Arabic language, which I don't want to get into. It's interesting for those who do like linguistics, about did Allah himself create this language to be used for this purpose? Do we believe that this is just some random language that, because He's revealing the Quran to Arabs, it's just going to happen to be in Arabic. And I've heard some speakers say, well, if Allah had revealed the Quran to, in China, then it would have been in Mandarin, Cantonese, or whatever. I don't think they've understood the proper Islamic, full holistic picture yet to say something like that. There's a reason why Allah chooses what He chooses and does what He does. There's a reason why Arabi has been chosen. It's a very specific reason. And He says Himself in the Quran. But for those who are interested, look at the history of it. And look at why many ulama focus on these original meanings of the words, the root letters, and how it's derived, and all these things, because they unlock a lot. So, how we're going to start off this conversation is by looking first at the pattern of this word tawheed. Now, most of you have studied even a little bit of Arabic, know that Arabic works simple. You start with root letters, typically 3 root letters. They're called trilateral roots. And then you take patterns. You take the 3 root letters, you plug it into a pattern, and it'll have similar meanings across, everything else. So I'll just do one quick example so that I can just show you what it means, and then we'll show you how tawheed would, work into this. So most of us know, it's across all of our languages, the word ilm, right? Ilm means knowledge, right? Okay. So ilm, root letters, ayn, lam, mim. Now from those 3 root letters, you just take all these different patterns that already exist in Arabic, you plug in those 3 root letters, sometimes you get an additional letter, sometimes you add this and that, and then you get new meanings related to that original meaning of knowledge. So for example, if you wanted to describe somebody who has knowledge, meaning a scholar, what word is that? Alim. So what is that? It's got the ayn, lam, and mim. What's in there? It's an extra alif that's there. So alim. This pattern is called fa'il. Right? What do you call someone who has, and I don't know if you're going to pick up on this, someone who has a lot of knowledge in a lot of different subjects? Anybody know? Allama, ahsant. Right? Now I know some of us, I don't want to mention which cultures, but some of us use that word allama for every single random individual, right? I've seen this on some centers' flyers that allama, qibla, hujjatul islam, fiqhatul islam, khalaq islam. I don't know whether random titles people are getting nowadays. My friend showed me a flyer from some place where this zakir basically was called Ustad Ulama wa Maraji. I was like, this is the craziest title I've ever seen on a flyer in my life. Okay, Ustad. Anyway. So, alim, allama. Now that's same. There's a pattern like that for it. Fa'ala, right? Same pattern exists. And you can put any other word on that. What do you call a teacher in Arabic? Mu'allim, right? What do you say for something which is known? A known item, something which is known to me. Ma'loom. Ahsan. We have one Arabic student here. Ma'loom, right? Which is a pattern of maf'ul. We could go on and on with this. There's so many other words, but you see, alim, ma'loom, mu'allim, ta'alim, ta'allum, all these words, the ayn, lam, and mim is there. It's just a few extra letters that get added based on whatever pattern it's in. So now let's look at another word, which sometimes we call the opposite of ilm, although it's arguable whether it is or not, but typically we've been taught the opposite of ilm is jahl, right? Okay. So if I have somebody with knowledge, we call them an alim. Somebody with jahl, we call jahil. Alim, jahil. Both of these are on the same pattern of fa'il. Something known to me is called ma'loom. Something unknown to me is majhul, which is same thing, jim, ha, lam, on the same pattern, which is called maf'ul. Now, again, we could do this. It would be interesting. I don't want to go through all of these. But you see that the Arabic is just filled with all these different types of patterns. That's how this works. And the reason why these are important is because these patterns come with a certain list of different types of meanings it can have. And that gives you a clue that sometimes the translations that are picked stray very far from the original intended meaning of the pattern. Now, let's go back to our intended discussion. If you can recite a salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So, we want to eventually get to tawheed. Tawheed is on this pattern of, anybody know? Taf'il. That's the pattern it's on. In order to get to our point, we want to show some of the other words that are on the exact same pattern, and then go through some of the meanings. Now, I'm sure you know many of them. I don't want 30 people shouting out different words, because they sound so similar, I won't be able to figure it all out. But what do we call it when we recite and say Allahu Akbar? What's that called? Takbir. That's on the pattern of taf'il. Takbir. Saying Allahu Akbar is called takbir. Does anybody know what calling or saying Alhamdulillah, what's that called? That's called tahmeed. Saying La ilaha illallah, do you know what that's called? Tahleel, coming from the same root. Okay. When we glorify, recognize Allah, or in our context, I know this is another misnomer in our cultures, but after salah, what's the first typical mustahab action that we do? Tasbih. So tasbih, now again, this is, I'm not picking on desis. I always seem like I'm picking on desis. I'm really not. But sometimes desis do some weird stuff. So tasbih is describing the act of, quote unquote, doing subh and glorifying Allah. Our context, desis, is that we use the instrument of it, we call it a tasbih. It's actually the act of saying this stuff is called tasbih. That, instrument, if you ask an Arab, they'll see like masbaha, misbaha, that's usually what they call it, right? It's the instrument of doing that. Anyway, it's okay. Call it whatever you want, doesn't matter to me. I'm okay. Okay, another one. When somebody tries to explain and clarify the meanings of the Quran, what's that called? Tafsir. Same root, same taf'il, right? When somebody wants to accuse someone else of being a kafir, what do? What are they performing? Takfir, coming from kufr. There's another example. I want to say tatbir, but I don't know if I should use that example or not. When you bury somebody, that's called tadfeen. All right? So hopefully you see what's going on over here, right? All these are just coming from that same pattern, taf'il. Takfir, tadbir, ta'aleem, which we did before as well. Ta'aleem is what? It's education, it's learning, it's teaching. Now, all of these are what? Whether it's ta'aleem, which means to teach somebody, it's teaching, it's education. Takbir, which is saying Allahu Akbar. Tafsir, explaining the Quran. Whatever one we go through, all of these are what? They're describing actions. Right? In English, sometimes these are known as verbal nouns. Right? They're describing actions. That's what they're describing. Tasbih is you're performing the sub and glorifying of Allah. Now tell me, monotheism or oneness, is that, I hate to bring out some English grammar here, but is that a noun or a verb? Monotheism and oneness. Those are nouns. Does that fit the pattern of taf'il? No, it doesn't. Now, is it a wrong translation? Not exactly, but does it seem like it's missing some of the nuances? Yeah, it does. If nearly every other word on the same pattern is describing an action, then Tawheed should be talking about the exact same thing. Tawheed, in its deeper, original meaning, should be describing an action as well too. Now, here's where there's two different opinions of the ulama. Some try to say, fine, we'll try to fit your little Arabic pattern game, and we'll just say that Tawheed means testifying that Allah is one, or saying that Allah is one. Okay, fine, maybe that'll solve it, but it seems like something is still missing over there, especially because it doesn't go to the actual root meaning. You have to add in the action of saying or doing something else. Like, it doesn't go to the actual root. Tawheed, what is the actual root word that it comes from? Now everybody's going quiet. You guys were loud before because you didn't. Well, ahad or wahda. Wahda, right? So ahad, same thing basically, right? Yeah, wahda. Wahda meaning? You guys don't like trivia during the majlis, do you, huh? Sorry. Wahda meaning unity, typically how we translate it. Unity. Something being one. So if that's oneness, if that's unity, then Tawheed can't have the same meaning. I think I've been here enough times to tell you that if you're going to translate two different Arabic words with the same English word, you've missed one or both of them. You've messed something up, you've lost something. You cannot translate words the same way. If wahda will be unity or oneness or unicity, however you want to say it, then Tawheed cannot be the same thing. And especially with the other context clue that we have in the actual Arabic grammar itself, that's saying this is most likely describing an action. So then what is Tawheed trying to describe? It's trying to describe bringing things into a state of wahda, trying to unify things, the unification of things. That's what Tawheed is. So Tawheed is not a belief. Tawheed is not that I believe in Tawheed. Tawheed needs to be performed. It has to be acted upon. The same way we can say, I believe in Islam, but those of us who want to be a bit more humble and honest say, I'm trying to practice Islam because we never perfected, so I'm trying to practice it. Just like those in the medical field usually say that. I practice medicine, or I practice law for lawyers. People who practice something know that it's a continuous, lifelong journey that you have to keep doing this over and over again. You have to keep growing with it, keep learning more and keep increasing. Islam has to be the same way. Tawheed has to be the same exact way too. Tawheed needs to be practiced and performed. Now, what does this mean to unify things? Let's explain. If you can recite, Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. You know, on these ayam of Azza, these 2 odd months that we commemorate the tragedy of Karbala, one of the lines that is always repeated to us over and over again by Bibi Zainab alayhi salam when she is there in Kufa, that's attributed to her, is what? That when Ibn Ziyad, la'anatullah alayhi, saying to her, how do you like what Allah has done to you and your family? That Allah has killed them and done XYZ. What does she famously reply that every single one of us knows? Ma ra'aytu illa jamila. I saw nothing except beauty. Now, we all know that any line, any statement that comes from the lips, from the heart, from the soul of Bibi Zainab alayhi salam, she doesn't just make it up on her own. This is being taught to her from the Mawla of the Muwahhideen, Amir al-Mu'mineen, Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salatu wasalam. And I said Mawla Muwahhideen for a very specific reason, which if you paid attention to what we said before, you should realize why I used that word Muwahhideen. This same similar statement we have in the words of Imam Ali, but a bit different. In one narration, he's reported to have said, مَا رَأَيْتُ شَيْئًا إِلَّا وَرَأَيْتُ اللَّهِ قَبْلَهُ وَمَعَهُ وَبَعْدَهُ. He has been reported to have said that I don't see anything except that I see Allah before it, with it, and after it. Meaning all that he sees is Allah, nothing else. Bibi Zainab, she is saying the same exact thing because Allah is Al-Jamil. Allah is nothing but pure beauty as well. So what she is saying is not that I saw beauty, but she saw the manifestation of Allah's beauty in Karbala, which is just her, in different words, explaining what Amir al-Mu'mineen salam is saying as well too, that everything, you should be able to see Allah in that. The good, the bad, the ugly, the terrifying, the things that make us, that break us, we should be able to see Allah in all of that. And it's difficult, very difficult for us to say in Karbala that Allah was present over there. But it's interesting that every year hopefully the ulama, the zakirin are trying to give us those reminders that this is what Bibi Zainab is saying. This is what Imam Hassan alayhi salam is saying when he's losing child after child, brother after brother, companion after companion. At the end where he says that Allah, the only way any person can handle this is by knowing that you are the one watching and allowing this to happen. Otherwise, who could handle something like this? The Ahlul Bayt can only handle this because they know that they can see Allah through all of these different issues. Their lens, the way they view reality, is that everything is a divine manifestation. It's all about Tawheed for them. So this idea of performing Tawheed is what? When I'm looking at an event, good events might be easy. Something good happens to me. Oh, Alhamdulillah, thank you Allah. Shukran lillah. Thank you Allah for doing this. When something bad happens, sometimes we don't want to get Allah involved directly in that. Say, Allah, why would you do that? Or maybe we might say, Allah, that doesn't make sense why you would allow that to happen. And to this day, Muslims still ask, these things that have happened in Palestine, in Lebanon, in Yemen, in Iran, anywhere and everywhere, you can name it, where Shias are being oppressed, Muslim as a whole, or anybody being oppressed. We say, Allah, you're watching, how is this happening? It's because they cannot see Allah and His divine image in these kinds of events. What Tawheed in practice is trying to get us to do is to see things through the quote-unquote eyes of Allah. How does Allah want us to look at these actions, to look at the behavior of individuals? Whether it's something really easy, like, okay, something good happened to me, okay, Allah did it for me. That's an easy one. But how can I see Allah while I'm picturing Shimr, la'anatullah alayhi, sitting on the chest of my Imam? That seems very tough for me to picture Allah like that. But if Imam Hussein's picturing that, then I need to learn how to do it too. What we have to learn to do, little by little, is to reformulate our idea of Tawheed. So hopefully it becomes something more like this, where I'm out practicing Tawheed every day. Something happens, I need to say, is this how Allah wants me to think about this event or not? Should I be seeing it from this angry lens, or a saddened lens, or a happy lens? Is this the right way or not? How do I even figure out what that means? These are questions that a muwahhid, that's why I used that term before. Muwahhid doesn't just mean somebody who is a monotheist. Muwahhid is a person actively performing tawheed. They're actively trying to unify everything under the scope and as a divine manifestation and reflection of Allah's names. How do I see Allah's names manifested right now? How can I see that? That I just lost my job, or a family member got sick, or a loved one died, or this happened to me, or had this issue with a family, whatever it is. How can I see Allah's names in this? That's what tawheed should be helping us perform. And there's many ways of going about doing it. And again, just for tonight, one of the greatest ways that we do that is, and I know sometimes people don't like that this happens, especially in the sort of modern age, this is why, and I do believe this, even though in Western psychology, they say it's not good to try, when somebody's dealing with a difficulty, they might be depressed, I'm saying not clinically, but they're going through something difficult. In Western psychology, they say, it's not a good idea to tell somebody, well, it could have been worse. In Western psychology, they say that's not a good thing to do. I don't know about you, but since I've been a child, and I'm sure many of you, the way that we have been raised, that whenever something difficult happens in our life, whose gham and musibah are we told to think about? The Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, specifically Karbala. Why? Because we say that there is no gham like their gham. There is no musibah and masaib like their masaib. So we're supposed to redirect and reorient ourselves that way to show that I need to figure out, number one, to get this off my chest and off my soul, get this burden away. I need to see it through them. Some people don't like the repetition of stories year after year. Well, maybe there's a reason why we have to repeat this so that this becomes an actual tool within our souls that we can use year after year, outside of, the month of Muharram and the month of Safar as well. And this especially becomes helpful as we commemorate a shahada like the shahada of the fourth Imam. Typically when those who come to recite the musibah and masaib of our Imam Sajjad, they usually jump right away to Sham, or maybe they start with Karbala, they go to Sham, and they describe the difficulties there, because by the Imam's own words, those famous words that we hear year after year, that when he's asked in Medina what was the most difficult thing, what was the most heart-wrenching thing for him, he repeats himself 3 times, Asham, Asham, Asham. But you and I should recognize that what makes somebody's experience difficult is how they have led up to that experience. Why does Sham become the most difficult thing? It's because of the other life experiences, the other bala, the other musibah and masaib that he's had to deal with in his life. So for tonight, I don't want to talk about Sham. I want to talk about what leads up to Sham. And I want to start right from the beginning of our beloved Imam's life. His life is unlike any other Imam's life. He is the only Imam to be alive while 3 Imams are living. Most of us may not know that he is alive maybe about 2 years old, right around the time of the shahadat of the first Imam. When he was born, according to most historians, just a few days later, his mother passed away. This Imam, the first musibah, the first bala that he knows is the loss of a mother. That's what he's first experiencing, just as a small baby. He's being raised by a foster mother. And some riwayah tell us that as he was growing older, whenever a plate would be put in front of him, and the plate would be shared by his foster mother and himself, they say that he would never take a bite from that plate of his foster mother. And when he was asked, he said, I fear doing some sort of dhulm and some injustice to my beloved foster mother. Because maybe that luqma, that morsel, that bite that she is looking at, maybe I might take that by accident, and I can't do that sort of dhulm to her. Even somebody that's not his actual mother, this is the type of love that the Imam is showing. At around 2 years old, the Imam now experiences the shahada of Amir al-Mu'mineen. Now, he's 2 years old. What can he actually understand and comprehend from that? We don't have much in the riwayat, but it must have been a very difficult thing for him, perhaps, if he was brought, let's say, to the masjid by Imam Hussein. And maybe he sees that his grandfather is now on the side, after being struck, is collapsing in and out of prayer, unable to stand, and seeing his uncle now leading the prayer. Maybe he's seeing as a young child that his uncle and his father are there crying as they see their own father with blood trailing down from him. As Ali is telling Hassan and Hussein not to cry, don't cry for me. Soon I will see Rasulullah and I will see your mother Fatima. This is what Imam Sajjad perhaps is experiencing at a young age. Then, as the Imam is now maybe 12 years old, he is watching as the taboot of his beloved uncle, Imam Hassan, is being carried. Based on his own wishes, they are trying to bring this taboot and this coffin towards Rasulullah. And this is not, right? Karbala was not the first time our Imam saw arrows being shot into the body of someone. There, when at a young age, Imam Sajjad is seeing arrow after arrow being shot into the coffin and the taboot in the body of Imam Hassan, seeing it being brought back to the house. And there he's probably witnessing Abbas and Hussein taking out the arrows from the body. Maybe he sees Zainab trying to take out the arrows as well. While Abbas and Hussein say, Zainab, this is not something for you to do. Let us take care of this. Zainab saying, he is my brother, I'm allowed to help him too. And we would tell Zainab, you have a chance to do this now, but you won't have a chance to do this in Karbala. Sajjad won't have a chance to do this in Karbala as well. And now we fast forward and we see how Imam Sajjad, with this difficult upbringing, with this bala and musibah that he's going up with, now we see him in Karbala leading up to this night of Ashura. And as that sickness overtakes him, and as the Asr of Ashura comes, and as he's in and out of consciousness, as he's unable to get out from bed, and as by his own narration, when he sees someone walk into his tent, he said, when this person walked in, I didn't even recognize who this individual was. I saw an old man come before me with marks all over his body, blood everywhere, until I recognized that this was my own father looking at me, saying his salam for the last time. And when he came and recited his wasiyah to me, I still couldn't believe this. When Imam Hussein then went out to the battlefield and made his final call, Hal min nasirin yansurana, Imam Sajjad says, I had no choice. I asked my auntie Zainab to help me out with my sword. I tried my best to walk outside and I collapsed in front of my father. My father turned to me and said, what are you doing outside out of bed? Baba, while there is still life in me, while I still have blood running through my veins, how can I let you go out and sacrifice yourself? Hussein calls Kulthum and Zainab to come. Take Imam Sajjad, take my son back. He is the way that Imamat will continue. Imam Sajjad has to watch. This is how his father has to go out for the last time. And this is the memories that he has to live with. He saw that Imam Ali was around his family in his last moments. He saw that Imam Hassan was around his family at the last moments. But Imam Sajjad, the first time that he sees his own father is after Sham Ghariba. And the next afternoon, as he's brought outside onto the battlefield with a collar around his wrist, tied onto his neck with that iron collar on him. As he's being taken through the battlefield, he finally sees the headless body of his father with all the arrows there. After being trampled by the horses, the bones have been broken, and he sees and looks at this, and now Bibi Zainab cries out, Wa Muhammad, Wa Husayna, look what they have done to the blood and the pool of Fatima. على لعنة الله على قوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون رضا بقضائه وتسليما لأمره ماتم حسين.
Ya Hussein, 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 Ya
बेड़ियां तौक संभाले हुए बीमार चला बेड़ियां तौक संभाले हुए बीमार चला भेड़िया 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 तौक संभाले हुए बीमार चला लेके बेपर्दा हरम पा बंदे बाजार चला भेड़िया तौक संभाले हुए बीमार चला भेड़िया तौक संभाले हुए बीमार चला हाय बेगोरो कफन लाश वो जलते खैमे बेरदाई वो सितमगार वो सहमे बच्चे खाक आबिद पे यही मन जरे खुबार चला भेड़िया तौक संभाले हुए बीमार चला भेड़िया तौक संभाले हुए बीमार चला खाके गश के इस तरह बाजार में बीमार गिरा ताजियाने से लिपट कर ये सकीना ने कहा इस तरह दुर्रे नाबिद पे सितमगार चला भेड़िया तौक संभाले हुए बीमार चला भेड़िया तौक संभाले हुए बीमार चला तो को जंजीर के जख्मों से लहू जारी है प्यास है धूप की शिद्दत है गशी तारी है हाय किस आलम गुर्बत में वो लाचार चला भेड़िया तौक संभाले हुए बीमार चला भेड़िया तौक संभाले हुए बीमार चला उठ गई ज़ैनब कुलसूम के सर से साए आग बरसाई गई और कभी पत्थर आए काफिला लेके यतीमों का जो गमखार चला भेड़िया तौक संभाले हुए बीमार चला भेड़िया तौक संभाले हुए बीमार चला शाह के सर को कभी देखा कभी सूए नजफ देख कर रोया वो ज़ैनब के खुले सर की तरफ जिस घड़ी आबिद मुज़तर सूए दरबार चला भेड़िया तौक संभाले हुए बीमार चला भेड़िया तौक संभाले हुए बीमार चला यूं मराहिल से गुजरते हुए रोए आदम जगमगाने लगे जिस मोड़ पे नबियों के कदम करने सजाद वो तैमन दिल दुश्वार चला भेड़िया तौक संभाले हुए बीमार चला संभाले हुए बीमार चला तो को जंजीर के जख्मों से लहू जारी है प्यास है धूप की शिद्दत है गशी तारी है हाय किस आलम में गुर्बत में वो लाचार चला बेड़ियां तो संभाले हुए बीमान चला मौला हक इमाम या हसन या हुसैन मौला हक इमाम हसन या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन वो आबिदे बीमार था वो आबिदे बीमार था चलने से जो लाचार था चलने से जो लाचार था और शाम का बाजार था और शाम का बाजार था थी मुस्तफ़ा की बेटियां मौला हक इमाम या हसन या हुसैन मौला हक इमाम या हसन या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन हुसैन या हुसैन शबीर की वो लाडली शबीर की वो लाडली सीने पे जो शाके पली सीने पे जो शाके पली जिसकी अबारन में जली जिसकी अबारन में जली मुँह पर तमाचों के निशान मौला हक इमाम या हसन या हुसैन मौला हक इमाम या हसन या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन
إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن عليا ولي الله أشهد أن عليا حجة الله. حي على الصلاة، حي على الصلاة، حي على الفلاح، حي على الفلاح، حي على خير العمل، حي على خير العمل. الله أكبر، الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله، لا إله إلا الله. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما.
حسن ما شاء الله. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الله أكبر، الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله، أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله، أشهد أن محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم. أشهد أن محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم، وأن عليا ولي الله عليه الصلاة والسلام. حي على الصلاة، حي على الصلاة، حي على الفلاح، حي على الفلاح، حي على خير العمل، حي على خير العمل. قد قامت الصلاة، قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر، الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله. أستغفر الله من كل ذنب وأتوب إليه إنه كان توابا. الله أكبر. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم، صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إنا أعطيناك الكوثر فصل لربك وانحر إن شانئك هو الأبتر. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. سمع له لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد وأركع وأسجد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم، صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد كذلك الله ربنا الله أكبر ربنا فاغفر لنا ذنوبنا وكفر عنا سيئاتنا وتوفنا مع الأبرار الله أكبر سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده سمع له لمن حمده الله أكبر سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده الله أكبر أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه الله أكبر سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده الله أكبر الحمد لله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدًا عبده ورسوله اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد بحول الله وقوته يقوم وأقعد وأركع وأسجد سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله أستغفر الله من كل ذنب وأتوب إليه الله أكبر سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده سمع له لمن حمده الله أكبر سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده الله أكبر أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه الله أكبر سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده الله أكبر بسم الله وبالله والحمد لله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدًا عبده ورسوله اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته الله أكبر الله أكبر الله لا إله إلا الله
إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله
لا إله إلا الله تسبيح الزرع سلام عليها
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد اللهم إني أسألك موجبات رحمتك وعزائم مغفرتك والنجاة من النار ومن كل بلية والفوز بالجنة والرضوان في دار السلام وجوار نبيك محمد عليه وآله السلام اللهم ما بنا من نعمة فمنك لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك صلوات. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, O Allah, I beseech you for the causes of your mercy, the rights of your pardon, safety from every sin and benefit from virtue. salvation from hellfire and every calamity, achievement of paradise and your pleasure in the abode of peace, and the proximity of your Prophet Muhammad and his purified progeny, peace be on all of them. O Allah, whatever bounties we have, all are from you. There is no deity except for you. I beseech your forgiveness and turn unto you. Salawat.
Mu'mineen, mu'minat, just a reminder that my salah is qasr. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم أشهد أن محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم وأن عليا حجة الله صلوات وسلامه عليه حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله أستغفر الله من كل ذنب وأتوب إليه إنه كان توابا الله أكبر أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر الله أكبر سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده سمع الله لمن حمد الله أكبر سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده الله أكبر أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه الله أكبر سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله الله أكبر بحول الله وقوته يقوم وأقعد وأركع وأسجد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد كذلك الله ربنا الله أكبر يا الله يا رحمن يا رحيم يا مقلب القلوب ثبت قلوبنا على دينك الله أكبر سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده سمع له لمن حمد الله أكبر سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده الله أكبر أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه الله أكبر سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده الله أكبر الحمد لله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته، والسلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليكم.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم إنه ليس لي علم بموضع رزقي، وإنما أطلبه بخطرات تخطر على قلبي، فأجول في طلبه البلدان، فأنا فيما أنا طالب كالحيران، لا أدري أفي سهل هو أم في جبال، أم في أرض أم في سماء، أم في بر أم في بحر، وعلى يدي من ومن قبل من، وقد علمت أن علمه عندك وأسبابه بيدك، وأنت الذي تقسمه بلطفك وتسببه برحمتك. اللهم فصل على محمد وآله، واجعل يا رب رزقك لي واسعا، ومطلبه سهلا، ومأخذه قريبا، ولا تعنني بطلب ما لم تقدر لي فيه رزقا، فإنك غني عن عذابي، وأنا فقير إلى رحمتك. فصل على محمد وآله، وجد على عبدك بفضلك، إنك ذو فضل عظيم. صلوات. In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful. O Allah, surely I have no knowledge of the source of my sustenance. and I seek it only through the passing thoughts that come to my heart, and I wander about in the cities searching for it. And I am perplexed in regards to what I search for. I do not know whether it is in a valley or in the mountains, in the earth or in the heavens, in the land or in the sea, and in whose hands it is and from whom it is. And surely I know that you have its knowledge and its sources are in your hands. And you alone distribute it by your kindness and create opportunities through your mercy. O Allah, therefore bless Muhammad and his progeny. And O Allah, increase my sustenance apportioned by you, and make easy to search and the source near, and do not make me strive in search of what you have not decreed for my sustenance, for surely you are indifferent to chastise me, and I need your mercy. Bless Muhammad and his progeny, and by your grace, show generosity to your slave. Surely you are the most generous. Salawat.
السلام عليك يا رسول الله، السلام عليك يا نبي الله، السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين، السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين، السلام عليك يا حسن المجتبى، السلام عليك يا سيد الشهداء بكربلاء يا أبا عبد الله، السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. السلام عليكم يا أئمة المعصومين علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي. السلام عليك يا حجة القائم بن حسن المهدي مولانا صاحب العصر والزمان. الأمان 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 من فتنة الزمان. عجل الله تعالى فرجه وسهل الله مخرجه وظهوره، وجعلنا من خير أعوانه وأنصاره وشيعائه ومستشهدين بين يديه. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Brothers and sisters, just a quick reminder, inshallah, Cafe Mawadda is open for business.